Hello, my name is Jelelle Awen, and this is day 3 of 33 days in my video series that I am calling Deepen. And that's really the intention of this series, is to deepen your connection with parts of yourself, aspects of yourself inside of here, and also aspects of your soul that are often living out lives in other timelines. So the intention here is to expand and deepen that interconnection that will lead to a much deeper and expanded connection with others as well. And we started that yesterday with the video that offered a guided meditation to connect with the part that we call the inner protector. And I hope you did that meditation, because the videos going forward in this series will use the protector as a guiding energy in them. So I will be bringing the protector into most of the meditations that I'm going to do. And the reason is that protector allows for more access and more connection to these different energies where I'm going to be taking you. You could really think of that protector, one way of thinking about it is as a defense mechanism. So connecting with the protector, you're able to negotiate with your own defense mechanism, which allows more accessibility and more connection to whatever you're wanting to explore. And when you're talking about exploring deeper hidden traumas, shadow work, healing karma, however you want to think about it, you really do need to negotiate that with the part of you that is going to be protective of you going into those territories. It's going to want to feel that there is a you that can show up for that, a version of you that is big enough to do that. So that's another thing we'll be doing in the future in the series, is connecting you with that higher version of yourself, the part of you that can really, we could say more your essence, that can hold space for all of these other parts. And particularly for the protector, that's important. Because as I mentioned yesterday, they seem to tend to see us or see you as a teenager or an inner child. So it's almost like they're not current with who you are, your awakening, your leading edge energy. So that's what connecting with them does, is they begin to get that. They start to see that you are actually a resource to them, that you are someone worth collaborating with. That becomes very important as your desires to move into your higher timeline begin to really bake and rumble and come up for you, which I believe that's what this next year, 2019, is offering us, a next level experience of our higher timeline. That's what actually I want to talk about today, is higher timeline manifestation, and offer a guided meditation as a bridge for you to what that looks and feels like for you. Because I think that's one of the big pieces. We say higher timeline, highest timeline, and then that can be kind of vague about what that actually means. So what I want to provide is more feeling sense of what that means for you. How really you could look at it as, who are you when you're in your higher timeline? What do you look and feel like? And also we'll start with where you are now and feeling where you are now, as opposed to or compared to that higher timeline, and seeing the bridge. That's basically what the meditation will be, is you'll be standing where you are now, seeing the bridge toward that higher timeline and that higher timeline version of yourself. And we will bring the protector along with us in that, so that their concerns, or if they have any fears or resistances, that will get processed as well. Because they basically usually are the energy that's standing on that bridge, that is guarding, that is modulating, that is monitoring access to this higher timeline. So I believe that with that monitoring of the protector, that modulating of the energies, I think this is why we can go into heightened awakened states or even bliss states. I've worked with people who have been in a bliss state for a year, where they just felt really active kundalini and just all of their chakras were popped and life was so magical. They describe this and they remember it. And then after that, it's just, they describe it as kind of a slow tapering down. So it's like they get a feeling for that higher timeline, that higher consciousness, that fifth dimensional experience, and then there's a slow tapering down. They've reconciled it as, I'm meant to do that, I need to embody more, I'm here to be human, I'm learning a lot. But I also feel like there's a negotiation place in that too. So that there's a way to negotiate with an energies inside of you to allow more consistent experience of that higher timeline version of you. And the way that you get that consistent experience of that higher timeline is by feeling, by allowing the feeling. And that will be the theme for this series, allowing feeling of the traumas that anchor it down, that lower your energy down. The traumas from this life and some of the parts that I mentioned earlier, and traumas from other lifetimes. And I will talk about this extensively in this series, that I feel that it's not past lives at all. It's other timelines. It's lifetimes happening in the now. Time, as we're conditioned to time in 3D, is a very linear picture, very segmented picture, when actually time is fluid. So as we get a sense of that in our emotional body, you connect with parts that we could call the teenager. You could say, oh, this was what it felt like to be 15, but yet their emotional pain is very current, and it's very much something you're feeling in the now. And I find this also with Metasoul aspects as well in these other timelines that they're in. So there really is no ancient past in that way. There really is no history in that way when it comes to the emotional body. And this means it does impact the manifestation of your higher timeline. It's usually, I think, the number one thing that impacts that manifestation is this undigested and unfelt trauma. So as you go into the meditation today, you might be aware of that. If you feel emotions coming up and feelings, you might get a sense of what that might be linked to. You might actually start getting, people will tell me their stories in sessions, and they're not just stories. They're not just content. There's actually very important reasons why they're sharing about whatever they're sharing about. It's actually where the trauma is stuck. You could think of it as like a looping scene that's like on freeze frame. And so this memory, for example, of being 12 years old and being bullied on a bus is very alive and is actually happening over and over again to the part that is experiencing it, to the part of that person. Their inner child going into teenagehood is still living that out. And so when things happen in the current that feel like that bullying, that inner teenager gets triggered and gets reactive. And suddenly you don't feel like an adult anymore. You feel like a teenager reacting to things. So I believe this happens a lot. And when we're not conscious of it and we're not with that part of us that's in reaction, then we can dream about our higher timeline reality, but parts of us are in these other timeline realities. There are timelines created from trauma. So if it's a deep trauma, and who's to say what's deep? It doesn't have to be this really extreme, what we would call extreme trauma in 3D, but if it's something that didn't get digested, if it's a pain and a suffering that didn't get felt by somebody else, by a caregiver, by a loving presence, then it is going to create its own timeline, and that timeline is going to be looping. So these stories, I'll hear from people, oh, I've shared this story so many times, I don't know why I'm telling you. Well, it's because this part is still living in that timeline. So as you imagine this higher timeline, whatever that means to you, my definition of a higher timeline is one in which you're serving love. So serving love can look like serving yourself, meaning healing yourself, serving love to yourself. Also, of course, it can look like serving love to yourself and with others. So serving love with others is really that place we can go to of higher timeline manifestation, where I think our essence really shines, where we really come alive with passion and creativity. And we can do that, we can be that when we've served love with these parts of ourselves and aspects in other timelines primarily and first. I think it's first. Sometimes you can serve others and be working on your own healing at the same time. I think for a lot of healers, also ones that I've worked with, they reach a ceiling on their service because they integrously feel where this trauma is, and that it's vibrating still, and that it's causing them pain and suffering, and they want to address it, and they want that higher timeline service to be cleaner, meaning without this rumbling energy going on. So higher timeline is service of love with self and with others. It also may be for you very specific. Maybe it's a specific geography that you're really drawn to, that your soul just lights up. And if you could live there, that would be part of your higher timeline. It could be specific, I just mentioned service, career or professional. I feel like we move from jobs to vocations. That is an aspect of our awakening. So it becomes really challenging to just do a job when you're awakening. This is why awakening people have such a struggle to do the 9-to-5 thing and pay the bills. It's just not enough context, and it's not ultimately really service. So there's going to be a soul pull toward that higher timeline of service that you will probably feel rumbling through the job you're doing. If you're doing a job that feels more 3D based or lower timeline. So as you connect to your higher timeline, you might start to get a sense of that. What I notice is that our soul purpose finds a way to bleed through, meaning it leaks through. There's something in anything we're choosing to do, no matter how dense it may seem, that soul gift is coming through. And you can usually connect, if you can see it that way, you can start to connect, oh, why have I been, behind a register for 5 years? Well, maybe that was a way to connect with people, and that actually every time you're giving them money or a purchase, you're giving them energy. I've worked with, for example, a few hairstylists in sessions, and there's a lot of energy exchange in cutting somebody's hair. So they're actually doing a lot of healing work, they're just not calling it that. And usually there's reasons, there's parts of them that aren't ready to step out as a healer. So, and that person receiving it, their consciousness can't go to an energy healer, but they can go to the same hairstylist for sometimes 20, 30 years because of that energy exchange that's going on. So your current career or job you may see extended into your higher timeline, meaning it's still a bridge for you for a period of time until it no longer is. There's other people that have had to completely reboot how they relate to higher timeline service, meaning either they have had some kind of attainment, a coaching practice or a spiritual teaching practice or an energy healing practice, something like that, and they've deconstructed it, they've let it go to focus on their own healing. Their higher timeline may look like moving back into it again, but from this new ground, this new humble ground, some divine surrender ground, and more self-love, healthy ground. So some of these energies of the past that have been working through narcissistic leaders, sexual abuse, money abuses and those kind of things. That's a really strong energy that's moving through the collective right now. It isn't just 3D, it's got a fourth dimensional dark and light feeling to it. So we can get caught up in that. I had a phase of experiencing that with my former teacher, so that I could come out of it and emerge into my service of love with more sense of purity and humility and surrender to the divine around it as well. You might see the other thing connected to higher timelines is sacred union or romantic relationship. So maybe you're in one right now that you see higher timeline-wise could move more into what I feel sacred unions are meant to move into, which is service of love. So these pairings come together to provide service to self in terms of love, but then also meant to expand outward and serve others through that usness, as I call it. So you might be in that place, or you may be single and sort of dreaming or energizing about the kind of mate that you want. That to me is all part of higher timeline manifestation, actually. That's not just imagination or fantasy. That's actually creating that higher timeline in which, as you create it, as you energize it that way, then you can move into it in the physicality. So I hope that's what today's meditation provides you, is a sense of how that could be, where you could visualize and imagine this higher timeline, get a sense of what may be in the way, such as your protector's concerns for you, and you can begin to move toward it. Even if it's etheric, even if it's during a meditation, that you begin to move into that higher timeline space, that is eventually what manifests it. This is something that I am living out right now, actually. Moving into my higher timeline after energizing it, particularly the last 2 years, here I am. And then where I'll be a year from now, hopefully, is even deeper into the embodiment of my higher timeline, which is really just me living as my higher self in my body. So let's connect to that higher timeline and see what unfolds. So we'll start by closing our eyes. Turning our focus inward. See and feel pure white light around you. Almost like a mist. Just creating this sense of safety and warmth. Today I'm feeling actually Yeshua or Christiel or Christ energy as the masculine on our right side, and Magdalene, Maggie on our left side as the divine feminine support. And see yourself standing on one side of a bridge. You might notice what that bridge looks and feels like, as the other side of that bridge is your higher timeline. Notice what it feels like to be in your current timeline, this side of the shore, we could say. You might see your current job or career, your birth family, your current relationship. And just let it surround you. And again, I say see a lot, and it's okay if you don't see and you more feel. That's fine. Basically, everything is see and feel. We're trying to, as I mentioned, combine those two so they feel more fluid, the clairvoyance and the feeling. Going to invite your protector to come in, to stand on this bridge with us. Maybe you already saw your protector standing on the bridge. And your protector is the energy that is guarding your higher timeline usually, that is monitoring, deciding how much of it you experience. Again, you may see your protector, usually masculine. They may have a weapon, they may have armor. Ask them, see if you can hear a response if you ask your protector about your current timeline and how they feel about it. You may get a response that they feel it's safe and therefore good. You may get a response that they'd like to help you change it, but they don't know how. You may just get a flood of support and love from them. You can also ask them what their fears are of you or concerns of you moving into your higher timeline. What are they worried about? You may hear a response, or you may just feel. Either is fine. As you connect more to your protector, it will get easier to see and feel them and hear them. Begin to move across the bridge now with your protector toward the other side, your higher timeline. If they're extremely resistant or afraid of you doing that, then just stay with them on the bridge and ask them again what they're afraid of, what they're concerned about, how you can support them to let go of the fear. And perhaps you're able to move across the bridge with your protector and to the other side. As you take in your higher timeline on the other side, what does it look like? Do you see specific geographies and homes? Or maybe you see airplanes or trains or travel. What relationships do you see in your higher timeline? Romantic, sacred union, maybe a partner you have now? Or do you see a new one? Again, it may be a feeling sense as well, or instead of seeing. What's your relationship like with your birth family in this higher timeline? Or do you even have a relationship with them? And what about soul family? Do you feel any soul family in your higher timeline? Community, and what does that look and feel like? Notice also how you feel inside as you connect to this higher timeline energy, which might be quite bright. It might even feel like it's hard to see because it's just a higher vibration. But how do you feel as you connect to it? This is the you that you can become more and more, that is actually able to manifest the higher timeline. That is essentially the higher timeline. Take in anything else you need to about this higher timeline, soaking it in. We're going to go ahead and stay here in this higher timeline as you start to open your eyes and come back to present. I wanted to keep you in that higher timeline frequency so you could just feel it inside of yourself. So you may have gotten specific visuals and maybe you didn't. Maybe you just got more feeling inside of yourself, a lightness or a relief or hope or desire, possibility, bigness. And that actually can be more important than the details. That is the you that you want to become more of as your love essence. And that's really what defines a higher timeline, is it's the expression of love as your essence. So thank you for joining me for this day 3, and I look forward to connecting with you in any comments that you'd like to leave on Facebook or YouTube or on the blog. And I will see you tomorrow.